I'm going to tell you why I'm looking forward to the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and maybe it's for the same reasons you are too. So the bombshell we were waiting for has finally happened. Apple has announced the date of its new event, which is the 18th of October, this coming Monday. And it's a big deal because we all know, we're all expecting that there will be a brand new Apple Silicon MacBook Pro. More than that, it's going to be fully revised. Now, this is based on information from notable and well-known respected sources, including industry analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, Bloomberg reporter Mark Gurman, and also YouTuber John Prosser. So everybody's got their expectations of what's going to be announced, but what should be announced is a new MacBook Pro, both a 14-inch and 16-inch model. And this is going to be a really big deal because it's going to be innovative for three notable reasons. A big change in form factor, in features, and in power level. Sometimes there are spurious claims that the first edition of a new Apple product is like the beta version. It's a test version for the early adopters to try out until Apple can perfect it. But in the case of the M1 Max, I really feel this is the case. Because what you got with the M1 Mac Pro, the 13-inch model, is you got a revised machine that was using the M1 chip, the first version of Apple Silicon. Now, because it was such an early product, to ensure all the previous programs, the ones that were made for Intel chips, were compatible with it, what Apple did was it built in a translation and emulation software into Mac OS. And this is called Rosetta 2. Now, this was really good because it did mean that just about all of the previous apps and programs, they could now work on the new M1 Mac. That was a good interim solution. And because the M1 is a fast, powerful chip, it did actually compensate for some of the slowness that you would get from emulating software. In some instances, the M1 emulated software actually ran faster than it would on a Mac with Intel chips. But since then, what's happened is many of the software publishers, they've had the time to revise their programs to make native versions for Apple Silicon chips. One of the biggest software programs is Adobe Premiere Pro, the video editing software program. And that only got its native release in August, which is a couple of months ago. So since last year, what it means is now the majority of programs, they have now been released in Apple Silicon native editions. And with the new chip that's coming, the new chip will be either the M1X or possibly the M2, depending on whether Apple is planning to innovate every single year. And what this means is with the new laptops, they're going to be more powerful than the last year's models, obviously, but they're also going to have native software. And that is a perfect recipe for a brilliantly boosted laptop. So this year we'll see the first release of a 16-inch MacBook Pro that runs Apple Silicon. And for many people, they prefer this form factor. And maybe you are a person who prefers it as well. And this is because it has, of course, that bigger screen. And it makes it so much easier when you are running productivity software to have all that extra screen area. Whilst that's definitely good for many people, for me, I find the laptop to be bigger, heavier, and less baggable, if that's even a word. So my personal choice is to go for the more compact 13-inch model, although this year the rumor is that the bezel will have been slimmed down so that it's going to be a 14-inch model, 14-inch screen area, but the case, the chassis, it's going to still have that same sort of form factor. So it's not going to be getting any bigger, but still be giving you this great advantage of more screen area. And I think that's going to be a brilliant solution because it means you have all this power and it's going to be highly portable. But traditionally, the reason people go for the bigger version of the MacBook Pro is not just because of the screen area. It's because it can offer a discrete graphics card, which is a dedicated graphics chip separate from the main motherboard. And this allows it to run more powerfully, to be able to give your apps more capabilities. Certainly it helps with graphics programs, with calculating programs, with video editing. It makes a big difference. And so the big disadvantage of the smaller model has been it's always had to have an integrated graphics card like the Intel Iris chipset, and this is less capable. However, with the new Apple Silicon chipset, what we are hearing is that because it's so integrated, it's all designed all in one from Apple, you can have all that graphics capability and not have to build out an extra bigger chipset. The great advantage of this is that you can have a smaller, more compact laptop and it can be just as powerful. And so that's the reason, the main reason I'm going to be really interested in the 14-inch model. And for many people, that's a fantastic advantage to have just about the most powerful Mac you can get besides the Mac Pro. And for it to be so portable, you can carry it under your arm and put it in a manila envelope if you want. It's one thing to remove legacy ports that nobody uses. It's another thing to remove ports for a standard that is far from standard. It's actually really quite crazy what Apple did. It removed these ports that are, used in everyday use. The USB port, the SD card slot, which is used by the majority of people and many professionals as well for, moving digital media. And additionally, the HDMI port, which was very useful for some people, very useful in universities when you have to connect up your laptop, or in a workplace where you have to connect your laptop up to a screen. That was just removed. So the downside of using a laptop from Apple in recent years has been that the laptop has had to have an additional element to it, the dongle. That's not very user-friendly at all. According to current rumors, we're going to see the return of the HDMI port, the SD card slot, traditional USB-A slots, and also the return of MagSafe, which really, when you've got an expensive computer, you want as much protection as you want, because the amount of times I've tripped over my cable, so this will help eliminate it. The touch bar, it's going. Now, it's very important for a leading computer manufacturer to research new technology, to investigate new solutions for doing things. However, the touch bar, I don't think was fully thought out. It wasn't really tested with a wide amount of people. And that's why it came out and it's really not used that often. I know there are a lot of people who are very happy with it and they love it. With touch typing, what really happens is you become familiar with the keyboard and you don't look at the keyboard. With the touch bar, because it's context sensitive, it means you're having to look at the keyboard. So the touch typing element becomes redundant in that you're having to slow down, look at the keyboard, see what you're looking at, manipulate the buttons or the touch bar, then get back to what you're doing. It slows down your workflow and it really does look pretty, but it's not that useful. And additionally, if you're using it with a separate monitor, then you're more likely to be using a separate keyboard, which is what I was doing. And if that's the case, then you're not even using the touch bar. So whilst I know many people will be missing it, there will be many more that are happy it's not going to be included anymore and you're not having to pay that extra expense for it. I rather the money that I pay goes onto processing power. With annualized technology, there's always the question, should I buy it this year or should I wait? And my answer to you is, if you don't need it, don't buy it. But make no mistake about it, the 14-inch MacBook Pro will provide the biggest generational shift in years.